What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of State of the Steelers. I'm Daniel, and today we're taking a look back at everything we learned from week one of Steelers Training Camp in Latrobe. Before we get into all the positivity and everything good that happened, I think it's important that we pump the brakes a little bit. This is still football in shorts. There hasn't been much tackling. In fact, there hasn't been any tackling, and from the sound of it, there won't be any tackling. But at this point, coaches are still installing their offense and defense. Players are learning new terminology, new teammates, and coaching styles. Every year we see fans declare someone a superstar after one great practice and call another player a bust after one bad throw. The truth is, this is just where the real evaluations begin. And, they only get better, and those evaluations only get stronger once the pads come on. That being said, there are definitely some storylines that have developed over the first week, and some of them are extremely encouraging. Let's dive into what we believe are the biggest takeaways from week one. First thing I want to say is that Mike McCarthy's fingerprints are everywhere. That's the first thing that stands out, is just how different this football team feels under Mike McCarthy, whether it's the no tackling, whether it's the time in which they start, and the foundation of how practice is going to go. Mike McCarthy had mentioned that he was raised that you get your hard work done in the morning, and so the Steelers have been practicing in the morning. Very different than what it has been with Mike Tomlin. There's no tackling whatsoever, so the backs on backers, the Oklahoma-type drills that the Pittsburgh Steelers were running under Mike Tomlin, which apparently was considered one of the more physical training camps, is no longer going to be there. I know there's a lot of concern, especially for the team that came, I think, third to last year in tackling, almost dead last there. And now you're going to take that ability away from them during training camp. Would that result in more missed tackles? And if I said that wrong, I may have. They were third last in missed tackles, or third in missed tackles, however you want to say it. They were pretty bad. And do you want that team to continue that way? Now, I guess you can say, hey, they were tackling last year, and now look at them now, or look at the end of the season, they had the third most missed tackles. So maybe perhaps this will help. Maybe this will help with injuries and things of that nature. And it feels like that's kind of what Mike McCarthy is kind of led with, that this is going to reduce the amount of injuries. And as of right now, there hasn't been any serious ones. So, and it doesn't mean that it's because they're not tackling. I don't think they would have tackled anyways. The pads aren't on yet. But this might continue this trend, once the pads do come on because of this. The players have also talked about how much more the pace, or how faster the pace is in practice. Reporters have talked about how organized practices have looked. We've seen more movement before the snap, different personnel groupings, receivers lining up in middle spots, quarterbacks getting plenty of work, which I think that was one of the questions as well, is how are the Steelers going to manage two young developing quarterbacks? And what it appears to be is, hey, they put up two fields, had first and second offense and first and second defense going against each other on one, and then the third string, the remainder of the teams went and practice on the other field. Really giving Mike McCarthy a hands-on approach, because he's been seen with the young quarterbacks. He's trying to develop them and figure out which one can be, or possibly has the potential to be, the Pittsburgh Steelers' future. And so I like it. And, honestly, whether you're a fan of Mike McCarthy or not, one thing is becoming pretty obvious. This doesn't feel like they're simply continuing what they've done in the past several years, which is what everybody wanted to get away from. I mean, from what I understand, is they haven't even run a running play at this point. Let me know what you guys think about that. I'm not out there. I haven't been to Latrobe, but it appears that, at least the last time I had heard, there hasn't been any running plays ran. And so to me, it just feels like a brand new chapter. Now, obviously, we'll know if it's successful when the games begin. But the early reviews from players and reporters have been extremely positive. And, another thing that everybody's been looking at, and I've kind of touched on it right now, was the quarterback position in the quarterback room. The competition is heating up. Now, that's probably the biggest story, is the QB room. And the backup quarterback competition. Aaron Rodgers is QB1. There's no changing that. This is his final ride. It would be extremely disrespectful to him to bench him at any point unless the Steelers are out of contention. Um, then maybe perhaps you want to see what you have in the youngsters. But while the Steelers are in contention, even if the young guys are doing well, you're not going to bench the four-time MVP Super Bowl champion who was asked to come back. You know what I mean? So even if it's better for the team, I just don't see them doing that. And he's going to be QB1. So the question becomes, who's going to be QB2? And honestly, I don't think the Steelers could have asked for much more from either Will Howard or Drew Allar. Will Howard's looked confident, is throwing with anticipation. He's hit some impressive deep balls, and he's commanding the offense. He looks much more comfortable than he did a year ago. You got Drew Allar, a rookie who's flashed a tremendous arm. He's made some beautiful throws, a beautiful touchdown pass where he layered the throw over the defensive player. Now, if you go check out my State of the Steelers YouTube channel, you'll see that I've been putting up highlights. Go check those out. I put out highlights for day 1, 2, and 3, and you can see all these throws that I'm talking about. But, when it comes to Allar, when it comes to Howard, I like the way they moved in the pocket. I like how they don't have the happy feet. It's one of the things that I had noticed when I'm watching the highlights is when it comes to like Mason Rudolph, for instance, his first couple of years with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he had some happy feet and he looked uncomfortable in the pocket. I'm not seeing that at this point. Again, ads aren't involved. We'll see if that changes then. But, this is all what I've honestly expected from both of these guys. A good competition and a good performance and putting it out there as well, putting out what they can do. Iron sharpens iron. You have 2, 3 quarterbacks fighting for one position. I think with Allar, it's more he's going to be QB3 regardless of anything. And so you really have Will Howard and Mason Rudolph competing for that quarterback too. I haven't seen a lot about Mason Rudolph. Not many people are recording him, I guess, during training camp, and it's been kind of hard to find a footage of him. But I'm sure he's having a strong camp. For him to still continue to be QB2 at this point, 3 days in, it's early, but we'll see. If we start to see more Will Howard with the 2s and Mason with the 3s, then we'll know at that point which direction the Steelers are going. As far as their QB1, Aaron Rodgers, man, I think he looks good. He looks comfortable. He hasn't had to do anything spectacular. He's made a few throws. I think he's been calm and efficient. But most importantly, I think he's been building a lot of chemistry with DK Metcalf. Several of the drills have ended with Aaron Rodgers to DK Metcalf touchdowns. Some of those have had to be contested passes, but, Rodgers put it in a position where he can make a play, and he did. And so I'm liking where the Steelers are going. I think he looks comfortable because of the offense and who's around him. And, honestly, the biggest thing is he's also stayed healthy. That's the biggest win when it comes to Aaron Rodgers right now. But he's looked exactly like the veteran leader you hope he'd be. And he's also helping with the younger quarterbacks, in my opinion. We've seen him out there kind of coaching them up a little bit too. Aaron knows this is his last ride. And so he's not, he's assisting. He's not trying to go into the quarterback room with the mindset of, oh, this guy's going to take my job this year. No, this guy's completely comfortable where he's at. He knows that his job is stable and he's not going to have any issues with that. So, complete team player. I like the fact that he was been spotted out with teammates, whether that's getting ice cream or going on these bonding trips. I think it's been pretty awesome. Wide receivers have looked good too. DK Metcalf already looks like wide receiver 1. He looks like every bit of wide receiver number 1. His size jumps off the field. His speed jumps off the field. You can already tell that chemistry, like I mentioned before, is building with Aaron. Whether it's in the red zone, intermediate routes, or stretching the defense deep. DK has been a force, and I think that's been because of the help of the other wide receivers. You have Mike Pittman, you have the tight ends who have gotten a lot of work over the middle. That's one of the other things that I have noticed when watching training camp up to this point is that The Pittsburgh Steelers are targeting the middle of the field. Now, in the previous regime, players have come forward. I think it was DK actually who mentioned that they would practice something, they would have a philosophy, they would be a plan going into the game, and then they would deviate from it and go and do something completely different. And sometimes things they never practiced, which is frustrating. I can only imagine how frustrating that is. And so for the Pittsburgh Steelers now, under Mike McCarthy, I think we're going to see more of a game plan that's going to be instilled and then implemented on game day. And so that this team will be more prepared offensively. But I think that DK is getting a lot of help. And you have the other wide receivers who are really standing out. You got Roman Wilson and Germie Bernard. Now, early on, it was just Roman Wilson running with the ones, but on day 3, Germie Bernard got to run with the ones quite a bit. And I think both of them look really good. Again, this is another iron sharpening iron type situation for me. You have Roman Wilson coming into his own as a third-year receiver. He spent some more time with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers spoke glowingly about him, and he's out there on the field. He's catching the ball. He's getting the ball thrown to him, which was something that was not very consistent last year. When he was on the field, he was very rarely targeted, and a lot maybe have had to done or do with he wasn't on the same page with Rodgers. But it appears that at this point they're building that chemistry, and I like it. And all we've heard is great things about Bernard and how he's a youngster, however, plays like a vet, plays like he has some experience. Both him and Roman Wilson were working with the route god throughout the offseason. And so really like what I'm hearing from those guys. That competition is going to be a really good one. And I think that there's enough room here for both of them. If the offense can run a normal amount of plays. Now, last season, they were on the bottom end of plays that they were on. Defense, I think they played almost a half a season more than the offense based on time of possession and plays that they were on the field. It was insane. But, the Steelers can flip that around and lean on the defense, and they can make some stops and things of that nature and not be so tired because the offense isn't just handing the ball over on a 3-and-out situation. Maybe perhaps, with more plays and opportunities, we'll see a good, healthy amount of both of these wide receivers. And I think that's a good thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get more into the training camp recap. So don't go anywhere. We have a few words from our sponsors. Hey, thank you for sticking with us. Before we get back into the conversation, I want to remind you guys of our website, SteelCurrentNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Go check it out before when you're done listening to me. And don't forget about our app. We have a Steel Current app. You can find that anywhere you get your apps, in their Play Store or Apple Store or wherever. Go check it out. Create a profile. You'll enjoy it. I thoroughly do. All right, so getting back into the conversation, let's kind of talk a little bit about the defensive side and some standouts. I think one of the biggest one has been Asante Samuel Jr. He's been taking advantage of the fact that you have Jalen Ramsey out with on the PUP list with injury, and so you have Joey Porter Jr. Although with Joey Porter Jr.'s back flare-up that he had, I think a remedy is simple. It's, give him a contract, and I think that back will heal up fairly quickly, but I'm all for it too. I think that then the Steelers need to pay Joey Porter Jr. How's the saying go? Pay that man. I'm all for it. He's done excellent work for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's homegrown. He's a guy that, the Steelers have struggled to develop a cornerback in forever that they've drafted. They've had to go out there and get products already made and developed by other teams to have a positive impact on the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary. Joey Porter has been the first one that the Steelers drafted and molded into a extremely good, cornerback. Now, is he the top cornerback in the NFL? I'd have to agree with the Steelers. Probably not, but I think he's up there. I think he's top 3, top 4. and he deserves that top 3, top 4 money, you know? And sometimes and you have to understand this too, had the Steelers paid him, 30 million or 29 million or way earlier in the season. Now that these guys are getting their contracts, he would have been 3 or 4, right? But because the Steelers waited so long and are continuing to wait, he's going to get paid a little bit more now. Come next year and the year after, and that contract's going to be great because somebody's going to be getting paid higher than him. It's just how the pendulum swings and how things work. But in their absence, Asante Samuel looks amazing. I think the Dalen Everett, the rookie, he's had some really good flashes and shown that he can, hold his own out there. He was, on the other end of one of those Aaron Rodgers to DK touchdowns where DK mossed him, but he was in good position. Maybe perhaps if he turns his head around, there's a play to be made there. But he's young, he's a rookie. He'll learn. But I'm excited for him. I'm excited for all the defensive backs. But Asante Samuel's been one of the biggest surprises. Um, he's taken full advantage of every opportunity. We've also seen some creative defensive packages. We've had TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig all rushing the passer at the same time. So 3 of your outside linebackers on the field at the same time. I like it. I think we've also seen TJ moving around a lot more during the first couple of few days of training camp here, which is something that the fan base has been harping for some time, just because it's almost been where he can now get schemed out of. In the past, his ability has been one that he could overcome scheme. Now that he's kind of got a little bit slower of a step, not an incredibly slow step, just he didn't take a full step back, but there's been some statistics there on how fast his get off was, and it's a couple of milliseconds, slower than it had been, which isn't a surprise. Father Time does that to people. But now because of that, he's been able to get schemed. Sometimes he's handled one-on-one, etc. And he's not that dominant force that he maybe perhaps once was. Now, I'm hoping that changes. I'm hoping he reverts back to the old TJ. He's had some weird injuries over the last few years that have really hindered his production. And so maybe perhaps this year with a Nick Herbig out there as well, lightening his load and not so physical training camp, maybe he's going to go into the season a little bit healthier, and maybe we'll have another dominant season like he's had in years past. But so far, with those guys, Alex Highsmith has looked really good. I've seen him pressuring quarterbacks quite a bit. There's been some drives where the quarterbacks and offense drive down the field, score a touchdown and stuff, but in reality, they would have gotten sacked a couple of times on those drives. And a big part of that was TJ and Alex Highsmith. Nick Herbig, I've seen just a few plays with him out there. And in the ones that I have, he's explosive off the edge. And I think this team's going to do well. Coverage and pass rush work hand in hand, right? And so this pass rush, I think if stays healthy, it's going to be a dominant one. And the secondary is coming up as one of the more dominant is going to be one of the more dominant secondaries if everybody can stay healthy, of course. And so I'm excited for it and looking forward to how this defense goes. All righty. And then, one of the biggest things about this training camp, or the biggest news of the week, is that there wasn't any major injuries. If you go and watch my State of the Steelers highlights, we did see Derek Harmon, have a weird step, and he was hobbling off at one point. There hasn't been anything about it in the news or anything like that. So I'm assuming it's insignificant, and maybe he just stepped wrong. But there's not been any big injuries, and honestly, that might be the biggest win of the week. Training can't completely change a season overnight. One awkward tackle, which they're not doing, one single or non-contact injury, a torn ligament, that all changes everything. Instead, the Steelers have made it through the first week without suffering any major ending or season-ending injuries. And they've gotten some good news. Broderick Jones is a guy that has returned to practice as well. I'm not expecting him to be a starter this year or or anything like that. And I'm not even expecting him to be ready to go or be in game time shape come the time the season starts. I think he can be a true valuable asset in the middle or late part of the season, once he's gotten back up to, game shape and things of that nature. And if there's a need for him to get back on the field, for instance, injuries are a part of the game. If a tackle goes down during the season, I think he's a guy that you want to be able to bring in and plug and play if he's back to his playing weight that he needs to gain some weight. He's very thin. But he's out there. He's running on both sides. He can also be a guy that could be a contributor as a swing tackle. He's got a lot of athletes. He's a very athletic tackle and a guy that I think that can get out there and be a pulling type of tackle. And so, uh, good news for him. No major injuries for the Steelers. There's already been a lot of other players on other teams that have had some pretty detrimental injuries to some key players, and the Steelers have escaped that for Week 1, and so good for them. I'll take it. you know, um, that's a big win in my book. But again, guys, remember this is still football in shorts. One thing I want to remind everyone is don't overreact. And when it comes to the quarterback position, there's no need to take sides like that right now. I know a lot of people like I've seen it in my comment section where if I praise Will Howard, people get mad. If I praise Drew Aller, the Will Howard people get mad. And it's insane. I'm like, is there not a world where both quarterbacks can do really well and have and create a good problem for the Pittsburgh Steelers? I think there is. And that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping both quarterbacks do extremely well. But remember, someone's gonna dominate training camp. Remember, what's his name? Tusar. I don't remember. Suzer. I don't remember the guy's name. He did really well. And he didn't make the team. He bounced around, ended up back, and never made a positive impact in any real games. But remember, this training camp is about learning, installing the offense, and building chemistry. The real evaluation, again, won't begin until the pads come on. That's when we start finding out who's and what this football team is really about. So overall, I think the Steelers fans should feel encouraged after Week 1. Mike McCarthy has brought a different energy. Aaron Rodgers looks comfortable and ready and in command. The quarterback competition behind him has been one of the most entertaining storylines. DK is looking like a wide receiver 1, and I think the other wide receivers around him are really, really helping him out. And most importantly, on this recap, the Steelers have gone through Week 1 mostly healthy. That's a successful start. It's a training camp. Now the intensity will ramp up when the pads come on and the competition gets tougher. So let me know wherever you're watching this, who's your biggest surprise through Week 1? Is Will Howard who you think should be quarterback 2? What do you think about Drew Aller and his development up to this point? What do you think about the offense not running a running play? So much more. Leave your comments down in the comment section. Give us a like, follow, subscribe, 5-star rating if you're listening to this on Apple, the whole 9 yards. I really enjoyed today's show. I'll see you guys on the hangover on Monday with my buddy Shannon White and my buddy Tate. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go.